Nobody cares about January 6th. Welcome to the Rob Lett Show. I'm your host, Rob Lett. We call these segments Soapbox News. They're current events I felt compelled to get on my soapbox about, but it's also your chance to get on your soapbox in our comments section. Why nobody cares about January 6th. That's the focus of today's Soapbox News. Not a lot to unpack here today. In this episode, we're going to discuss the hearings, why nobody cares about January 6th, the reality, and who Democrats fear in 2024. But before we get started, I'd like you to go ahead and do a few things. First of all, like this video, subscribe to it. If you're on YouTube, to the upper right-hand corner, you'll see a bell. That's a notifications bell. Click it, and it'll notify you the next time we release a new show. If you're on Rumble, though, to the upper right-hand corner, you'll see a share button. Click it, and it'll share this video with a friend of yours who should have been here with us today. Go ahead and do all of those things that apply right now. On January 6, 2021, Americans started adopting a new word into their everyday lexicon. Suddenly, the word insurrection was being used by a ton of people who couldn't even spell it. An insurrection is defined as an open revolt against a civil authority or a constituted government. For the better half of 2020, we watched buildings burn all across the United States. We watched BLM and Antifa protests. We saw stores get looted and statues torn down. We saw police departments taken under siege. We watched people get maced, beaten, and yes, even killed. In all of 2020, even though we saw the same organizations rearing their ugly heads from state to state against buildings both public and private, we never heard the word insurrection being used. And yes, taking over a police department and barricading 6 city blocks with weapons is an attempt to take over government. On this day, then President Trump contested the election results of the previous year. In protest, some of his supporters showed up to the Capitol. They went inside the Capitol. One of his supporters was shot, and the details of this insurrection is now what is being referred to as the January 6th hearings. Now, when you think of the word hearing, what do you think of? The most obvious thing you'd notice is that it's mainly comprised of the word hear, lending one to believe that it's designed for you to hear all of the details that happened during this event. But nothing has been further from the truth. You would think what Trump said in his speech that day was a secret, because I can't find any Democrat to tell me specifically what Trump said in his speech that incited violence. That's point one. Point two is we've been hearing the phrase storming the Capitol for quite some time now. And as footage keeps getting released of the actual day of this event, we see supporters not only invited to come to the Capitol, but being let inside the Capitol. Have you ever invited someone to your place, let them inside your place, and then later referred to them as having stormed your place? Personally, I haven't. Now, don't get me wrong, there's obviously footage of people climbing through windows, forcing their way past law enforcement, and if those are indeed supporters, I denounce that. What I'm referring to are the things I'm getting ready to show you. Now, I'm not here to retry January 6th. On the contrary, that would defeat the purpose of me naming this video what I named it. Nope, I honestly haven't been paying that much attention to it at all. And that's what makes this interesting, because I'm sure there have been some people who have been glued to the television for the entire hearing, and they don't have the answers to the kind of questions that I have, and I haven't even been watching it. How can someone like me, who hasn't watched any of this stuff, suddenly come along and poke holes in something that has an entire committee of people working on it? You may be asking, what do you mean poking holes? I mean, where's the audio and video of what Trump said specifically that day to incite violence? I mean, why aren't they playing it over and over and over again so that every American has a clear depiction on why we're wasting taxpayers' dollars to indict a man when we don't even know what it is that he said? Could it be because what he said wasn't enough to say he incited people to do anything?
I know that everyone here will soon be marching over to the Capitol building to peacefully and patriotically make your voices heard.
Could it be one of the reasons they don't play this over and over again is because some politicians have said worse? I mean, here's Democrat Chuck Schumer.
I want to tell you, Gorsuch, I want to tell you, Kavanaugh, you have released the whirlwind and you will pay the price. You won't know what hit you if you go forward with these awful decisions.
On June 8th, Nicholas Rosk was arrested for an assassination attempt on Justice Kavanaugh, one of the justices named by Schumer.
I want to tell you, Kavanaugh.
Is there a hearing scheduled for Chuck Schumer, too? And if Trump's words didn't incite the crowd to violence, can anyone explain to me who these people are who are inciting people to go inside the Capitol? And why haven't they been arrested? I mean, there's video footage of a security guard waving the protesters in. Who was that guy? And this is Ray Epps, who was not arrested for some reason.
Put it out
that I'm probably going to go to jail for it, okay? Tomorrow, we need to go into the Capitol. Into the Capitol. Peacefully.
I want you to notice two things here. First of all, notice how the crowd isn't all that enthused about going inside of the Capitol. But the second thing I want you to notice is notice how the crowd responds by calling him a Fed. They believe they're possibly being set up. And Ray Epps is well aware that what he's suggesting could get people in trouble. He even says so himself.
We're far beyond that. If you're not, we're far beyond that. Oh, yeah. You know that. I know. In fact, tomorrow, I don't even like to say it because I'll be arrested. Well, let's not say it. We need to go. I'll say it. All right. We need to go in to the Capitol.
So ironic they'd accuse him of being a Fed given the unprecedented search on Trump's home recently. And once they got to the Capitol, can anyone explain to me who's opening the door from the inside? I mean, I've seen the video. And I'm not just talking about the person who physically opened the door. I'm talking about who is it that actually buzzed the protesters in. When's the last time you willingly let someone in your house and then claim they stormed it? I'm just asking. And what about Cassidy Hutchinson, whose story about Trump grabbing the steering wheel of the limousine and choking out his security detail was so unbelievable that the whole internet just started making jokes like Trump was 007 or something. Isn't Trump 75 years old at the time? That's a bad boy. He's a bad boy. These are just some of the reasons these hearings are a joke. The things they've been accusing Trump of since day one are absolutely unbelievable. It's as though they've been trying to accuse him of being a real-life James Bond at 75 years of age. Are there any real cross-examinations at this hearing? Some people have even referred to the hearings as a show trial, meaning it's never been about justice. It's meant to be like a TV show in order to sensationalize and keep you glued to the television. But for what purpose? For the purpose of ratings, of course, but more importantly, so that they can demonize Trump and possibly, dare I say, arrest Trump so that they can kill his chances of him ever running in 2024. So let's examine that for a second. First of all, it's obviously not demonizing Trump. Trump-endorsed candidate Kari Lake just won the state of Arizona. A clean sweep, I might add. Now, this is obviously a moving target as we approach the midterms, and I'm hearing mixed things on what Trump's endorsement record is in regards to the number of people he's endorsed for the Senate and the number of people he's endorsed for the House. But I'm hearing he has a high endorsement record, like 95% for the people he's endorsed for the Senate and 79% for the people he's endorsed for the House. With the recent stupid move from the FBI search, these stats are likely to improve. The so-called hearing and the FBI search are not demonizing Trump. Heck, I'd argue that Trump's notoriety is better than Joe Biden's right now. Show me the Democrat candidate who has the guts to say they've been endorsed by Joe Biden. Have you seen one? I haven't. In fact, CNN says 3/4 of Democrats don't even want Joe Biden to run in 2024. That's 3 out of 4 Democrats who don't want Joe Biden to run.
75%. The vast majority of Democrats, 3 out of 4, don't want Biden to be their nominee in 2024. That is according to a new CNN poll. Out front now, David Axelrod, former senior advisor to President Obama. David, I heard that and sort of stopped in my tracks for a second. 3/4 of Democrats don't want the incumbent president to run again. How worried should Biden be right now about that?
Well, I mean, obviously, this is a very unhappy bit of data.
When MSNBC asked AOC if she'd support Joe Biden in his run for 2024, her answer was very telling.
About President Biden, he is saying he's going to run again in 2024. Will you support him?
You know, if the president chooses to run again in 2024,
I mean, first of all, I'm focused on winning this majority right now and preserving a majority this year in 2022. So we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. But I think if the president has a vision, then that's something certainly we're all willing to entertain and examine when the time comes.
That's not a yes.
Yeah, I think we should endorse when we get to it. But I believe that the president has been doing a very good job so far. And, should he run again, I think that I think we'll take a look at it.
Even Kamala Harris, when they asked her in an interview whether she plans on running with Joe Biden in 2024, initially she said yes. And then she came back and amended her response and said she'd be running if he had decided to run. Why the change? Somebody's telling her behind the scenes that homeboy might not make it. So again, if the goal of all these hearings was to demonize Trump somehow, it's failed. As far as arresting Trump goes, I don't think that's going to happen for a number of reasons. One, once you start a precedent like that of arresting your political opponents for BS reasons, you're going to open a Pandora's box that you wish you had never opened. Do you remember this?
It's just awfully good that someone with the temperament of Donald Trump is not in charge of the law in our country.
Because you'd be in jail.
Secretary Clinton.
Trump really could have pursued Hillary if he wanted to, as president, but he didn't. I'm sure somebody close to him advised him that it would fracture the country down political lines, and it would also start a precedent of arresting political opponents for trivial reasons. And reason number two, you want to talk about firing up a candidate's political base? That would be the absolute dumbest thing you could do, would be to arrest Trump. Not only would you get every Republican dying to vote, but as part of their platform, they'd be asking every one of their candidates to prosecute Democrats the minute they get in there. I just don't see this happening. It reminds me of this meme I saw. The first time a Democrat hears the mainstream media say they have information that will totally bring Trump down. The 4,689th time a Democrat hears the mainstream media say they have information that will totally bring Trump down. Look, it gets Democrats excited thinking about the prospect that Trump might go to prison. It gets ratings, I get it, but don't count on it. I'm not saying it could never happen. I'm just saying don't hold your breath. Let me tell you another area where Democrats are just totally wrong. Because Trump is the most visible, they assume that if Trump were gone, the GOP would be dead in the water. That's totally wrong. Listen, in Georgia where I live, Trump clearly showed his disdain for Brian Kemp. But that hadn't stopped Georgians from voting for Brian Kemp. We're not stupid. We know there's only one candidate who has actually ever beaten Stacey Abrams before, and it's Brian Kemp. So this idea that the GOP somehow can't function without Trump is totally inaccurate. I tell you what Trump has done, though. He's inspired a new type of conservative, one that's tougher and doesn't take any crap. So the Democrats are stuck between a rock and a hard place right now, because no matter how they play this hearing out, it could be awful for them. If they don't arrest Trump, Trump obviously carries a lot of weight while Biden's at his weakest point approval-wise, and the Democrats have absolutely nobody of Trump's caliber in their coffers right now. The Hill had the nerve to print a column saying that AOC might be a good matchup for Trump. And for you Democrats who are excited about the possibility of arresting Trump, let me give you another reason why you'd better not do that. One of the biggest reasons I think the January 6 hearings are a waste of time is because it doesn't truly address the Democrats' greatest fear in the first place. What's their greatest fear, you ask? Democrats' greatest fear is that Republicans will elect someone who's just like Trump, but is more charismatic and has broader appeal. Well, who is that, you ask? Democrats are really fearful of Ron DeSantis. I tried to find this video that I saw of Bill Maher explaining to Democrats why they need to worry about Ron DeSantis, but doggone it, I can't find the video anywhere. It doesn't really matter because I got more proof that they are concerned about Ron DeSantis. I know they're worried about Governor DeSantis because they're starting their hit job early. 2022 isn't even over yet, and they're already doing their darndest to smear Ron DeSantis. Governor Gavin Newsom ran an ad taunting the citizens of Florida to leave their state and come to California.
I urge all of you living in Florida to join the fight, or join us in California, where we still believe in freedom.
Is Newsom crazy? A lot of the people in Florida already left California in the first place. This dude is in La La Land. The View even tried to take their stab at DeSantis. They invited him on the show and got flat out rejected. The response from DeSantis' team was probably one of the best rejection letters ever written.
Florida's governor is saying thanks, but no thanks to an invitation to join the host of The View. DeSantis turned down an offer to appear on the daytime talk show with his team, tweeting out this scathing response that reads in part, "Thanks for the invite. I understand you are sending this request on behalf of your team, but are the hosts of The View really interested in hearing from Governor DeSantis about all of the important work he is doing on behalf of Floridians? Which of the below statements from the host of The View do you recommend our team consider when deciding if the interview will be a genuine pursuit of truth or worth the time?" DeSantis' team goes on to lay out many of the personal attacks the liberal host launched against the governor. Here are just a few.
You're just short of calling him a negligent, homicidal sociopath, because that's what he is. He's risking the lives of children, children's parents, their grandparents, anyone they may come in contact with, so that he could appeal to his white supremacist base.
DeSantis, I think he handled COVID miserably. I think he's a fascist and a bigot. It's anti-black, it's anti-gay, it's anti-LGBTQ+, it's anti-American. It started with CRT. If you start coming after black people, what comes next, right? Of course, the LGBTQ plus community, and then women, and then other marginalized groups.
I mean, Harris, what an invitation. And the email said we would be honored.
Yeah, thanks, but no thanks. This is comical to watch. The Democrats have worn out their playbook so often, people see it coming. I don't want to give it away, but the Democrats are wasting their time. They better put all their energy into finding a better candidate in 2024, because I got news for you. DeSantis ain't the only other person they need to worry about. I'm not going to say who I think the other names are, but the Democrats had better do something, because both the president and the vice president are wildly unpopular, and they just signed a $739 billion Inflation Reduction Act that doesn't reduce anything at all. The Democrats are the only party who signed off on this bill, so when this bill blows up in their face, and it will, the Democrats will have absolutely nobody to blame but themselves. They have absolutely zero bipartisan support for these tax increases in the middle of a recession. Even Obama's on record for being against that one.
So he's absolutely right. The last thing you want to do is to raise taxes in the middle of a recession, because that would just take more demand out of the economy and put businesses in a further hole.
Oh, and in case you're one of these people who are in denial about the definition of a recession, I got that covered too.
You've spoken about the economy, about problems with the economy. Are you going to inherit a recession from President Clinton? And President Clinton, what are your thoughts about that?
I really don't have any comments. I look forward to talking to the president. I'm so honored that he was extended his hospitality to me and my wife yesterday. He didn't need to do this, and I'm most grateful that he would do so.
Mr. President, what do you think about a recession?
Well, a recession is 2 quarters in a row of negative growth. I don't think we're going to have that.
Did I miss anything? I don't think so.
A recession is 2 quarters in a row of negative growth.
Well, we'll never get it all, but in this episode, we discussed the hearings. We talked about the fact that they're called hearings, but ironically, there's a lot that the general public still hadn't heard. We hadn't heard over and over again the so-called insightful words of Trump's that caused violence. We hadn't heard over and over again about the people who not only invited the supporters to the Capitol, but buzzed them in. We haven't heard who these people are with headsets on the scene. Who are they? And who are they talking to on the other end?
See that? Makes a bigger hole that people can jump through. And by the way, who is that guy? Who is that guy, by the way? And why is he wearing a wire? He just took out a big chunk of the window, and he's got a wire. I mean, that's the kind of thing that government people sometimes wear.
And we hadn't even spent any time talking about this guy, John Sullivan. Have you heard of him?
Down to the people! Down to the people! Down to the people! Damn right. We got fucking rip Trump out of that office right over there and pull him out that shit. Nah, we ain't about fucking waiting until the next election. We about to go get that motherfucker. I ain't about that shit. Because you know what time it is? I want y'all to be after me. It's time for a revolution. It's time for a revolution.
Now, you heard what he just said. Now, this is John Sullivan again. But this is also JohnSullivan.
Not Antifa,
they actually
not
pulled
Black
him.
Lives Matter. This is about the Constitution.
And this.
They were about light. They were about that. I cannot believe it.
Make sure you follow me on Instagram too. Likewise, bro. Work to the done.
So why would he demand that we remove Trump from office one day, then disguise himself as a Trump supporter the next? These are just a few of the things I'd like to hear at the hearing why nobody cares about January 6th. We talked about why nobody cares about January 6th. We said nobody cares about January 6th because we all know it's a scam. Listen, we watched 4 years of the Democrats trying to lock up Trump, impeach Trump, do anything they can to arrest Trump, even if they had to lie to do it. Yes, we all know that Trump contested the election results. We get that. But we also know that there are a lot of unanswered questions from that day. I haven't even touched on half of the real juicy stuff, like Stephen Colbert, the reality. We also address the delusion of the Democrat Party. The Democrat Party is under the delusion that if they somehow got rid of Trump, they'd be rid of their biggest problem. I say they're wrong, because what you'll never get rid of is what Donald Trump inspired, and that is the new conservative. Even as you watch this, just last night, Harriet Hageman won in Wyoming and fired Liz Cheney. Liz Cheney makes number 8 out of 10 Republicans who once voted to impeach Donald Trump. All but 2 have lost their jobs. And it's just a matter of time. This is bigger than Trump now. Democrats just haven't figured that out. Who Democrats fear in 2024. And if you don't believe anything I just said, then explain to me why Governor Gavin Newsom out of California, The View, and Bill Maher are all worried about a governor out of Florida. Because that's the real fear of Democrats in 2024. That there will emerge a Trump 2.0, a refined version of Trump, when they know they've got nobody. And that's where I'll leave it for now. If you're new around here, our channel is both a combination of podcasts, long-form understanding of conservative principles, and soapbox news, videos where you get to get on your soapbox about the latest news of the day. Be sure you like, subscribe, and share this video with someone who should have been here with us today. We'll see you next time.